Yeah, are we good to start?
Yes, Rakesh, I think we can start the session.
Super. Good. Thank you so much then. Hello all. Just to give a quick introduction, sorry, before that, I would like to welcome you all to the ServiceNow IRM training sessions. So as you know, it's kind of a demo session we're going to do today, but instead of demo, I would like to call it more of an overview session, right? So that you guys will get a good glance of so what exactly you are going to do as a part of your whole ServiceNow training, okay? And I want this session to be more interactive. It's not like a class session. It's more of an interactive session, yeah, where we discuss each other and we try to learn things along with them, okay? Yeah, so before we go with an actual topic, let me give a introduction of myself. I am Rakesh, can call me as RK, with an overall experience of 15 years in the IT. So I call myself a bit lucky because I got an extensive experience with multiple domains, yeah, as well as the profiles, I would say. So I worked as a business analyst, I worked as a product owner, yeah, I worked as a solution architect. So yeah, it's a good flavor of different experience, I would say. And I'm going to be your ServiceNow training for this batch. Okay, so we're gonna have a long journey. So we're gonna work together, yeah, to learn things. Okay. Sorry, any questions? Okay, feel free, guys. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah, feel free to stop me. Okay, at any point of time, so we can always have a healthy conversation about that. Yeah, but that was quickly about me. So I was part of multiple implementation projects as a greenfield implementation project, I would say, because that will be primarily focused, and it's a great best practice from ServiceNow as well. Yeah. So of course, we know there is no tool which satisfies the compliance or the customer requirements with 100%. But yes, we always stay back with the greenfield implementation first. Let's implement what we have. On top of that, we can always go ahead and make slight changes to meet the business requirement. Okay, that's always a best practice. So as a part of this training, we are going to learn more of the greenfield implementation first. That should be the primary focus because we need to know the system better. Yeah, that is when we'll be able to make a right decision to do the customization or not in the future. So yeah, as a part of this training, it will be a greenfield implementation training. We are going to discuss in every module. Okay, let me usually we go through the roundtable of introduction, but I see a lot of people. Yeah. So maybe not for today's session. Maybe we can, yeah, hold it on for next couple of sessions. Okay. Maybe today I'm just going to give overview. We are expecting more people in the upcoming trainings so that, yeah, we know who are the actual participants and so that we can know each other better. That will be the plan. So yeah, today it's more going to for you guys to gain some knowledge about what exactly we are going to do in this training. Yeah. On top of that, if you have any questions, if there are any clarifications you guys are looking for, or if you want to know more about the training content or how will be the approach, feel free. Then yeah, we are more than happy to discuss those items. Yeah. Instead of picking up the introduction right away. Hope that sounds good. Anyone has any expectations or you want anything to be picked up right away, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, like I said, guys, I want it to be more interactive. Okay, so more questions, you'll learn better, you'll gain more knowledge. Any questions from anyone before I start with it? Thank you, Chaitanya. Okay, let me quickly share my screen. And the one who joined now, no worries. Yeah, don't bother that you guys have missed any important topics. Not yet. Okay, we are yet about to start. And till now, I have just given my introduction, and that should be fine. Yeah, we will get to know each other later as well. That should be fine. So we are about to start the overview session now. So yeah, stay tuned. Okay. So ServiceNow IRM / GRC. Okay. So is it two different trainings? It's all one. Okay. ServiceNow Integrated Risk Management or ServiceNow Governance, Risk and Compliance. So ideally, most of you people would have heard of a word called GRC. Yeah. So Governance, Risk and Compliance. But what is this IRM? Is this something different? Are there two different applications? ServiceNow IRM and ServiceNow GRC? There will be a lot of such questions in your mind. Yep. So to start with, they all are one and same. I don't want to go deeper. When you go deeper, you'll better understand why it's called as IRM. So at this point of time, yeah, we can just take it as like both are referring to the one ServiceNow applications. Okay. For now, at this point of time, that should be good for us to know what exactly the ServiceNow GRC is about. As a part of this training, we are going to discuss a lot of topics. Okay. I'll maybe give you the quick glance before we start there. The overall session is going to be more than 20 to 25 hours, I would say. Yeah. And the whole training is primarily focused on risk and compliance management. Yeah. Maybe ServiceNow GRC RNC certification focused, I would say. Yeah. But doesn't mean that we need to be only looking towards a certification. Yes, certification is important. It's more from interview perspective, right? But if you personally ask me, let's understand the knowledge behind that. Okay, let's understand how exactly the ServiceNow application works, how ServiceNow integrated risk management works within that ServiceNow, and what all of the capabilities ServiceNow IRM is going to give us, right? On top of that, once we have this knowledge, we can always go back and take the certification, but only this training is enough for certification? No, it needs more hands-on experience as well, right? So let's go step by step. Let's understand the ServiceNow IRM application first, more from the knowledge perspective, and then let's get some hands-on experience. That's the second step. And then third step will be certification, right? Because certification will be more niche questions. You need to remember the table names. You need to remember the capabilities of certain features, right? So to do that, we need not to do it right away, right? That's why I said the primary focus should be to gain the knowledge of the IRM application first. ServiceNow IRM. And then some hands-on experience. Let's see how exactly what will happen if you click this form, what will happen if you change this field, what is going to happen if you make some change on the control, how it is going to impact your different application in IRM. And that's when it will be much, I would say 50% of ready, then we can primarily focus on the training part or the certification part. Okay. With that, the whole ServiceNow IRM is having 4 major pillars. Okay. That's the foundation, I would say. You may pick any topic within ServiceNow IRM. It would fall under any one of this column. Yeah. And guys, anyone who joined newly, like if you feel like there's something you missed, nothing to worry. Yeah, we are just about to start the topic. It's going to be more generic today. Yeah. And we are going to go in detail in the training. Okay. But still, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me. Okay. Yeah. Like I was saying, the whole ServiceNow IRM is having 4 main pillars, right? Any topic you pick within ServiceNow IRM, it should fall under either one of this topic. So we are going to discuss this topic or these 4 pillars one by one. One is, just ignore the module 1 and module 2, right? So it's just about how we are going to get prepared for training, for the implementation of any application. Okay. So for example, now in your organization, you might be working like a developer, or you might be working as an architect, right? Or you might be working like in product owner, or maybe GRC manager. You might be wearing multiple hats in your organization, right? So when you get a new requirement, either it can be a new implementation in IRM, or it can be kind of an existing application. You already implemented ServiceNow IRM. Now you want to enhance it or expand its capabilities, right? For example, you might have started with just policy and compliance management during implementation. Yeah. Now you found the value it's going to provide to the organization, or you got the budget. Now you want to expand it for risk management as well as audit management. So these are the different possible use cases where we might have, or we might get requirements for the implementation perspective. So when we get such requirements, right, how exactly we need to position ourselves, right? What should be the planning? Where should we start with? What are the prerequisites? Who all needs to be involved? Yeah. So this is more from the project management perspective, I would say. Okay. So there is a standard methodology by ServiceNow. Yeah. So we have to follow the same methodology. It's more like a best practice, just like your ITL framework. Yeah. Like ITL framework design doesn't tell you that this is what you have to do, right? It just guide you what will be the best approach if you follow this ITIL framework. Exactly, ServiceNow gives you implementation methodologies, right? Again, it's not mandatory. Now it's up to you whether you want to follow the methodologies because it has some positive outcomes. Based on that, you can go ahead and decide should follow that or not. Okay. So what will be the implementation team? Who will be the implementation checklist? What will be who all the resources are required for the successful implementation of the project? Okay. So initially, what used to happen normally, just ignore, just not ServiceNow IRM. For any implementation, normally we used to have a probably an architect in the project, yeah, maybe a developer, and sometimes these people used to manage the BA work as well, right? This is how small the project used to be before, right? So you have an architect, ServiceNow architect per se, and a ServiceNow developer, right? Not an IRM expert, a general ServiceNow developer. And if you give them the requirement, they were in a position to build an application for you guys. I mean, when I say build an implementation, the GRC process in ServiceNow. But this is not the case with ServiceNow IRM, right? Because I have come across, right? I mean, at least that's my assumption. Wherever I have come across such projects, I've seen they have failed miserably because the assumption that anyone who knows any other application can also build ServiceNow IRM. This is a bit of misconception, I would say, because the different modules work differently in ServiceNow. Probably they might be an expert in IRM, right? They can go ahead and implement other applications, but specifically when it comes to IRM, it's not just the development knowledge you can apply here. You also need a bit of a domain knowledge. You need to see how different processes are interconnected. Yeah, that's very much important for you to draw a blueprint for the ServiceNow implementation. This plays a major role, and you'll be able to handle this if you are IRM trained or IRM specific skill set you have in, right? Irrespective of an architect or maybe a developer or maybe a BA, these are not straightforward requirements, right? So that's why probably having a training specific to IRM would always be a beneficial for the successful of the project. I wouldn't say you cannot implement or it doesn't go well, right? But I have seen many people struggling extending with the timelines, extending with the budget. Yeah. So to avoid that later concerns, it would be better to get the right team built up front of your project initiation or the project kickoff. So this is going to help you for the smooth implementation of the project from end to end. Yeah. So, I mean, you guys may agree or you guys may not agree. I mean, that's completely fine. Okay. Because everyone has their own perspective. Because I've also seen certain people getting successful in implementing IRM as well, right? It's not like technically impossible. It's just about doing the thing in the right way. Okay. So any questions or any concerns? The point you mentioned?
No.
Good. And feel free to disagree with me. Okay. It's not like whatever I say is correct. So yeah, we all have a very good experience over here. We have come across a lot of backgrounds with a lot of experience. Yeah, at any point of time, if you feel that you don't agree with that point, we are always happy to have a healthy discussion, which might be healthy for, which might be helpful for other team members as well. Okay. Feel free to challenge me at any point of time. I'm more than happy to correct if it is not or acknowledge it if I'm wrong with that. Okay. Yeah. The four main pillars or the foundations, what I was talking about IRM, that is about the entity framework. That's a basic foundation, not just ServiceNow IRM. It come across any IRM implementation or any GRC implementation. Entity is nothing but a scope. Now, what are entities or what are assets? Normally, if you're quite close to IRM, you would have heard the word entity. If not, if you're already working in ServiceNow, you might have heard the word assets, right? It may be an item or it may be a ITSM, any implementation, you might be familiar with the word assets. So what are these entity / assets? For now, I'm going to use asset, okay, so that it's more understandable. But when we start IRM training, it will be purely entity record, yeah, because we need to talk the similar language. But just for understanding purpose, now what are these assets in general? So assets can be anything. It can be any device in your organization. It can be any site in your organization, or it can be any location where your organization is performing the operations. It can be critical resources. Any employee can be an asset as well, because employee is your asset of your organization, right? So now how can I decide what are my entities for my organization, right? Because everything is an asset. Furniture is an asset with respect to an organization. Yeah, a laptop is an asset for your organization. Now, how do I define my entity framework for my organization, or maybe for the implementation, right? That's the biggest question, the simplest question, and the most challenging answer you get from your stakeholders. Because again, like I said, everything is an asset. Now, the right question we need to ask the stakeholders is like, what are those assets which are more critical to your organization, right? For example, an organization is doing an e-commerce business, right? And if the e-commerce site goes down, their entire business goes down, their payment gateway, their order management system, right? These are their critical resources, right? So the first thing is to identify such critical assets in an organization. Yeah. How do we do that? There are multiple ways. Is it part of IRM? Yes and no. Yeah. Some people, what they do, they identify the criticality of the assets as part of an IRM. Yeah. Or some organizations might have a different process to identify the criticality of an assets. Yeah. So for example, your servers, your network devices, your applications, your servers, anything, it can be business applications, right? IT managed applications or the business managed applications. So there can be different assets being used in our organization. And how do you identify the asset criticality depends on how organizations have been done the implementation. When we see it from the ServiceNow perspective, right? I mean, we have an application, we have a module called business continuity management as well. So which help you to do the impact analysis of an processes or an asset. Yeah, that will help you to identify the criticality. Yeah. So your BCM process starts, it identify the criticality of your assets. Yeah. Now these assets which are critical will be fed into the ServiceNow Integrated Risk Management. Yeah, this is how the models work together when you build everything within the ServiceNow. We have also have operational resilience within the ServiceNow, which help you to identify the criticality of your business services or the service capabilities. Yeah. So, and it's not that you should use BCM and operational resilience itself, but there are multiple ways. Just wanted to give you some input. It's not part of the ServiceNow IRM training, but it's better for you to know where exactly the data is flowing from. Yeah. From that perspective, just want you to bring up these points. Now, using this input, might be from the different process or the different tool, we identify the business critical assets, and out of those assets, right? The next question would be, are we doing the compliance against all the assets in your organization? Or maybe, are you doing the compliance against all the assets on day one in your organization, right? So these would be the valid questions we need to check with the stakeholders, identify them, narrow them down. What are our critical assets first? Yeah. So this all comes under the entity framework. So we are going to decide, this is the first foundational pillar, or the among the four important players, this is the first which plays a very foundational importance, because all your three other pillars, that's policy and compliance management, risk management, and audit management, they sit on top of your entity framework. So what are the entities you define in this module or in this application or in this exercise or event? It's going to fed into your policy and compliance management, risk management, as well as audit management, right? So what happens sometimes, we do a kind of a phased implementation. First, we go with policy and compliance management implementation, and then we go with the risk management, and then we go with audit management. Okay, or sometimes we start the audit management first and all. So it's always great to do in the phased manner, but while we're doing the design part, we should ensure that we consider all these possibilities. What might be our entities for policy and compliance management? What might be our policies for the risk management? What might be the or entities for the audit management? Yeah, keeping these things in your mind, like that's what I said, right? I mean, it's not straightforward implementation. Having this expertise of knowing how these entities are connected to the different modules and making a slight changes, how it will impact is your other implementations. This will really help in the successful of your project implementation. Yeah. So once we do this entity frameworks, we are going to define the policy and compliance implementation. And is it important to start with the policy and compliance management? I would say best practice, yes, but it's not a technical limitation. You can start with the risk management implementation, or you can start with an audit management implementation as well. Yeah, but when I say best practice, the next question would be why you think it's a best practice. Yeah. So yeah. So if someone has a question, again, feel free to stop me. Okay. I cannot see if someone is raising hand or someone has something to say. Yeah. So please, shoot out, and I'm happy to stop and go with your questions. Okay. Yeah. So we were discussing about this implementation sequence. So should we start with policy and compliance, or should we start with the risk management, or should we start with the audit management? Yeah. So the best practice, start with the policy and compliance management. Identify your critical resources and apply your compliance framework. You first decide what are your policies, what exactly you're going to measure the compliance, your KPIs, and how you are going to measure that. Yeah. And then you proceed with risk, right? The risk management implementation. Now, what are risks? Something which is going to impact your organization's way of working or the operations, right? Which is going to do your financial impact, or maybe operational impact, or maybe your reputational impact. It can be anything. Now, why we have these controls for? These controls are used to mitigate that risk. Yeah. Now, once you already defined your compliance framework, now at one hand, you already have your compliance framework decided. On the other hand, you are going to identify the critical risk against your organization. Now, to mitigate those risks, what controls can be used? You already have your backup plan. You already have these controls in place. All you need to do is just use the existing control to map against your risk, which is going to mitigate. Yeah, I'm not saying it might eradicate the risk completely, but it is going to either avoid the risk as much as possible or mitigate from critical impact to the low impact or the medium impact. Yeah. So this is the advantages of going in the sequential implementation. Yep. Now, audit management. So what we do in the audit, again, they will identify some set of audits. It might be a regional based audit, or it might be an departmental based audit, right? Sometimes what happens, just IT audit takes place. Sometimes financial audit, sometimes IT asset audit takes place, right? So these are departmental based assets. Sometimes regional based. For example, suppose if your organization is working in the multiple regions or in multiple countries, yeah. So you cannot pick audit for global at once, right? So what you do it on the waves perspective, like wave one, pick countries from the APAC, wave two, pick countries from EMEA, something like that, right? Now what we do when we start such audits, we identify the assets which are within the scope. If it is for example, EMEA, right? So you are going to scope the assets which are going to being used in EMEA or in a specific country as a part of this audit. So these audits or assets are nothing but an entities, right? You are going to do the audit against them. What data it is going to validate, what data it's going to process, what is the policy being implemented, how they are going to exchange the data, what is the control in place, what is the checklist, what is the procedure, how you're going to manage this data, right? Right. So when we do audit for such assets, you already have your controls in place, which are defined against the same asset. You already have your risk defined against a control and the entity. Now you can use these two information to feed into your audit management, right? So half of your job is already done. Most of the events or the task which you might have done in compliance management and the risk management, this can be fed directly as an evidence into your audit management. It might be an evidence request by an evidence request, or maybe by the indicated task or the remediation task, or maybe the attestation request, right? All these will work as an evidence in your audit management. And do you guys need to do it manually? Nope. For example,
Rakesh, sorry for interruption. Actually, your screen
Mhm.
stuck on entity scoping part only.
Okay, sorry for that. I thought let me just try to reshare my screen. Sorry, thanks for reminding that. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. No worries. I mean, like I said, it's just an overview. Anyhow, when we start the training, we have to go through all the slides again, okay? So it's more of an informational perspective. And we were discussing about the compliance framework. Where was I? So, yep, I was just going through this architecture part and show you how exactly the different data are connected to together, right? Again, like I said, there is no strict policy that this is how the implementation should go. But if you follow the recommended sequence by ServiceNow, it's going to give an additional heads up so that you can use the existing data to feed it into the next implementation. And most of your job would have been already done. At least the 30 to 50% of work would have been already done because you know to start with an audit management. Yeah. Yeah. To start with an audit management, the input you are going to get is from the risk framework or the risk management. Yeah. And the policy acknowledgement, your authority document, and your entity framework. So this is how it's going to get feed from different module into your audit management. Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to show you this architecture and say how the different modules or the different pillars work together to achieve the common objective of the business. Okay. So we are going to pick each module one by one as a part of our training. And then we are going to touch base on, let me, yep, just wanted to show you this as well to just give you some high level information. And sorry, so please ignore about the APM integration. Okay, just wanted to get this slide for you as quickly as possible. So yeah, I just got this from that. So we are going to configure this workflow as well. So how the automation work in ServiceNow. So when we are going to create an application is like, just took as an example, okay? It can be any asset in your organization. How when an application or a server is onboarded in your organization, how exactly the end-to-end flow works, yeah? So how it gets converted into an entity in IRM, yeah? How the GRC team will get to know what this application is about, what all different information is going to deal with, what is the criticality of that information. Yeah. So once that information is done, what based on the input or based on the information we got from this scoping, right? How are we going to decide what compliance framework we need to apply for these applications? What types of risk are applicable for this given asset or an entity? Yeah. And how to train the entity owner or the business application owner to ensure that he's responsible to ensure that the controls and risk needs to be worked upon. Yeah. So we are going to discuss about or configure this entire end-to-end workflow as a part of our risk identification process as well. Okay. So I'm just trying to give you some glimpse of entire training. Okay. So we you know like what all we are going to learn as a part of whole end-to-end training. So you might look like it's bits and pieces, but yeah, that's the expectation because like I said, it's just a quick glance that what all is going to be covered as a part of this training. At any point of time, if you have anything to clarify or anything to ask, feel free to stop me on that part. Okay. Maybe let's jump onto the risk management processes. Okay. So we are going to do the hands-on experience, right? We are going to do the risk identification configuration workflow. Risk appetite, yeah, we are going to just touch base. We are not going to do the configuration, but we are going to touch base more from the theoretical perspective to understand the risk appetite because it's not something we configure. It is something we get from the leadership team, from the management team. Yeah, like what is the minimum risk appetite of a given organization? This is something more that C-level executives discuss and give us some input, which is we are going to put it into the system. Yeah, because whatever the risk identified or the risk score is identified, we are going to measure it against our risk appetite to identify, are we crossing our risk appetite or are we within our risk appetite? Okay, this is where we are going to use this concept. We are going to do the risk assessment methodologies. Yeah, it's the concept of advanced risk. We are going to discuss about the configuration of methodologies, configuration of factors. Yeah, there are different types of factors like manual factors, group factors, and we have scripted factors as well. Yeah. As a part of this training, we are going to do the configuration of factors, group them against assessment instance, and then build a methodology which can be used against a risk. Yeah, there are different types of methodologies against, again, right? One, the methodologies which you are going to create against a risk record, or the methodologies which you are going to create against any objects in your service now. Yeah. Initially, we used to do the risk assessment against a risk record itself. Now, if you want to do the risk assessment against a change record, yeah, change has its own process where they need to be a proper upload before implementing any change record, right? So if you want to do any risk assessment against a change record, yeah, or against an exception or a policy exception record, yeah, if the business asks us to configure the methodologies for such records, yeah, we can go ahead and do it against them using methodology against or methodology for an objects. Okay. We touch based on this. We are going to discover about quick thing, the confidential part. Yeah. So if I'm not wrong, we don't have this concept any in other modules within ServiceNow because we know ServiceNow deals with very sensitive information. ServiceNow IRM deals with quite of confidential and the sensitive information. So how we can enable the sensitivity nature of that data in the records? Yes, we have ACLs, we have groups, we have access, but is it enough? Yeah. When we come with such questions, yeah, ServiceNow has an answer. ServiceNow IRM has an answer wherein we come up with confidential record. Maybe any other model, you can mostly rely on group access or ACLs. Yeah, but within ServiceNow IRM, there are at least more than 3 to 4 types of access management. One, of course, your roles and groups. Yeah, it can also go ahead and enable the user hierarchy accessibility or the group-based accessibility or confidential records. And these are not like configurations. Okay, you get the requirement from the customers and you do the ACL configuration. If they want to change it on ad hoc or dynamic basis, again, you need to get the developers involved. But with these capabilities like confidential records, group-based access, yeah, user hierarchy, right? These are quite dynamic, which are more very specific to ServiceNow IRM. Yeah. So when you open a record, any person having access to edit this record should be able to go ahead and mark that record as confidential and decide who should have access to this confidential record. For example, if person A, person B, person C, all three have access to see a risk record based on the ACLs. Yeah. But even though they have access, but there are some sensitive information which they are not supposed to see that, right? So what person A does with his edit access to the risk record can mark that record as confidential and mark only person B should be able to see this record. Yep. With that, it's only person A and B will have access. Even though ACL matches, your confidentiality configuration is going to restrict access for person C. Yeah. These are more capabilities we are going to discuss in the ServiceNow IRM training. We are going to touch base on audit management. Yeah. So what all we are going to do in the whole part of this training, we'll start with our policy and compliance management implementation. Now, as an organization, we have to decide what we are going to do. Okay, we are going to follow the GDPR policy. We are going to follow the NIST policy, right? Okay, we are doing business in USA. Then we have to be CFIUS compliant. Yeah, that's financial requirement for any organization doing business in USA. Or we need to be NIST requirements or maybe DORA requirements. If you're doing any business in the Europe, then these are the requirements we need to be adhering to. If you're doing business in India, then we have newly introduced, government has newly introduced the DPDP Act. Yeah, that's Digital Privacy of Data Protection Act. Then we need to be adhering to the DPDP Act, right? Now, based on your operation, your organization is going to decide, okay, what your compliance policy framework would look like. Yeah. So once you define the compliance framework, you need to decide how you are going to measure that. Okay, as per the GDPR policy, this is the sensitive information which needs to be showed who is not supposed to see that. You need to mask that data. This is your GDPR requirement, data privacy requirement. Now, as an organization, how you are going to manage that, how you are going to track that, and how are you are going to show that which all applications or which are assets are being followed that which are not doing that. Okay, so this is where it comes, you're configuring your compliance attestations, your indicator task or the automations. Okay, and then the audit management comes into the picture. This is more like a third line of defense. Okay, so they will verify your policy and they will see what all you are going to do as a part of your compliance framework, and then they will validate whether you are doing the right thing or is it the right approach, where is the gap, how to improve that. Yeah, what are the critical issues we need to address, what are the recommendations. Okay, so now this is where what we are going to discuss in the audit management. So the primary focus will be the part of the training. When I see from the training perspective, the primary focus will be on policy and compliance management and risk management implementation as well. Okay, Audit management, yes, we are going to touch base on that. It will be more from theoretical perspective. We are going to see what are the different personas involved, what are the different flows available, how exactly the flow works from end to end as a part of ServiceNow IRM audit management. Okay, that will be the primary focus of the audit management. And then we are going to discuss some generic topics. So we have done with entity framework, and then we speak with the policy and compliance, and then risk management, and then the audit management. Okay. So once we do this, we have something called GRC common elements. Yeah. These are generic topics. These are not related to any one module, but they are related to all the modules. Yeah. Something like, again, like I touched base on the confidential record part. We also have something called issue record, where you can go ahead and create a issue record manually, or you can go ahead and generate issues automatically for any compliance failures or any risk indicator failures or audit control test failures. Okay, we will be able to go ahead and generate those issue records automatically with some configuration part. It's available out of the box. It's just that we need to add some flavor on top of that, not customization. I would say it's just configuration. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we are going to touch base on these four major pillars, and then we start with this common features, yeah, like confidential records, workspaces, issue management, yep. And then we are going to touch base on the reporting part as well, reporting and dashboard. So there are n numbers of reports and dashboards which are being built by ServiceNow out of the box. Okay, so we are going to first discuss mostly on the out of the box dashboard available. Again, it will be not in the slide. We are going to discuss directly in the system. Okay, these are just our reference slides so that ensure that I don't forget something or something is missed, so that we know that we are following the sequence. Okay, so we are going to discuss about the reporting dashboard topics as well. And then coming to the generic topics as a part of this training. Okay, I mean, yes, we'll start with the IRM training, but it's also quite important to know how exactly the basic features work. For example, if you are going to work as a consultant for an IRM implementation, probably they might ask you to provide more information about the licensing part, about plugins part, how exactly these things work, how about the entitlements and all. So that's a very important topic we are going to pull as a part of this discussion as well. Yeah. So we are going to discuss first about what will be the different store releases will be available for ServiceNow. And then we are slightly going to touch base on the ServiceNow product entitlements. Yeah. So this knowledge is quite important. Yeah, because this license should be our design factor as well. Yeah, you can go ahead and implement your risk process in general, and you can go ahead and assign risk to anyone, but does he have license to work on this record? Yeah, does he have that entitlement to work on this record? That will be the primary challenge, right? So before doing the design, we need to ensure that we have enough license, or how many licenses we do have. Among that license, how we can define our process so that we can work with a limited number of licenses. Okay, so yeah, it's important for us to know the different types of entitlements available, how exactly the calculation happens, what are the different types of roles available in ServiceNow IRM, how does it work closely with ServiceNow platform negotiation. Okay, some people being lucky might be involved in the negotiation with ServiceNow as well, while discussing the number of license part, or expanding the number of licenses part, or exactly the metering works for ServiceNow licenses. Okay, so this is more important topic before we get to the actual discussions. Okay, so we are going to touch base on this part as well. What are the different types available and how exactly the calculations happen? I discussed about yes, yeah. So we discussed about the different versions as well. So currently we are in Australia version. Probably we might get new versions upcoming. Yeah. So how the different version of platform works, like how it impacts, there will be two types. Okay, one, your platform upgrade, right, or your name of your platform. Also, we have something called ServiceNow store releases, right? So we will have ServiceNow risk and policy X.0.1, right? Now it's very important for us to know how exactly these versions impact with your ServiceNow upgrades, right? So sometimes when you upgrade your platform from X to Y, some plugins or some dependent plugins will also get auto upgraded. Yeah. So it's very important as a developer or as an architect or as an BA to understand the impact of your platform upgrade. Yeah. So we know if it is getting auto upgraded, what are the actions needs to be taken? If not, okay. So what are the dependencies on the platform? If we want to upgrade our ServiceNow plugins, individual plugins, also along with the platform upgrade. So what are the necessary steps we need to take for that part? Okay. So, yep, I mean, this is just quick glance of all the training part. I said I want it to be more interactive. So maybe I just want to give some time for you guys. If you have any questions on any topic, I'm happy to answer them. Guys, feel free. It's more interactive session. Okay. Yes,
Hi.
Kumar.
I hope my voice is audible.
Yes, Kumar, it's audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So how different is this from the training provided by ServiceNow itself? Because frankly speaking, company is providing us, asking us to do it, but how different it is? First core question is that, and second thing will be the certification one. So how useful it will be for us for doing certification for this? Because I have seen there are some requirements for this. We need to have admin certification or something fundamentals, then we can go for IRM. So how those things two are intact?
Perfect questions. Thanks, Kumar, for bringing up this topic. Okay, let me take one by one. To start with prerequisites. Yep. Yes, it's always important. I mean, because when we see ServiceNow IRM, right, we'll be more focused on ServiceNow IRM concept. For example, you open a risk form. Now the topic wouldn't be like, okay, this is the form, these are the filters, these are the navigator, this is your Scrum field, right? So these are mainly ServiceNow admin training part. So if you have finished the ServiceNow admin training, or if you spend some time before you get to the IRM training, it will be great for you guys to understand the flow, right? Now, while we are discussing the risk process, and if you start thinking, oh, what is flow, right? Then it becomes quite difficult to know the risk processes first. Yeah, because that's the reason why ServiceNow has defined some prerequisites. It's not mandatory, but if you want to really understand the grit of training, right, and make use of the time we are spending together, then yes, it's important for us to complete this prerequisites training first. Yeah, it's not mandatory, like I said, but more knowledge you will get once you have this prerequisite training. Okay. Next, how it is different from ServiceNow training. ServiceNow trainings are great. I'm not saying they are not helpful. Yes, but you won't get to see some use case specific. Yeah, but you won't get to see how exactly these things work in the real world. Yeah, they will tell you, or ServiceNow trainings tells you that, okay, this is your entity framework. But if you can take an example of a very complex organization, it's very difficult to apply these trainings knowledge directly into your organization. Yeah, like I said, you need to ask right questions to your stakeholders. Can you tell me what is your compliance framework? Okay, GDPR. What is the definition of GDPR in your organizations? Like how exactly the data privacy works? Who is going to manage that? Are they part of your compliance framework, or they are part of a different team? Are they having the same reporting structure? Because it's important for you to get a buy-in from the leadership team so that it's easy for you to get the right information to do the implementation, right? So I wouldn't say they are not helpful. Of course, they are great. It's good if you spend some time before getting into the training, you'll understand the concept more with more clarity. But there is a lot of difference of ServiceNow trainings and in-person training. Yep. And I'm always available for you for any questions, for any topic. If you want me to repeat, I'm happy to repeat. If you have any questions or any use case specific questions, okay, I'm happy to pick up in the training so that it can be helpful for other trainers or other participants to know what kind of requirements are being coming in different organization. Hope that answer your question, Kumar. Yep. Does it make sense?
So, yeah, only few more things. So those topics are covered. The prerequisites for the training are covered in our training, like the admin and fundamentals.
No, so Kumar, it's purely ServiceNow IRM training. Yeah, because we have a separate training. Maybe Priya can give you more information about that, right? We have topic specific expertise and the different trainings available, right? So this will be mainly focused on ServiceNow IRM concepts. Those prerequisites, we have a separate trainings.
Okay. Are you going to help in the certification also somewhere around?
When you say help, maybe we will go through the participation. I mean, we'll have a questions. Okay, we'll do the mock-ups. We will have a list of certification questions which might appear. Right, we will definitely try to help you more from the knowledge perspective. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And if you have any other expectation from the certification, yeah, feel free to let us know.
Hello, good
Hey, Jay.
morning. I have few questions.
Yes, Jay.
Okay, okay. I have experience in ServiceNow development
Great.
and ITSM.
Mhm.
Okay, but I know this is totally different module with the different concepts and different base tables and everything. So my
Mhm.
question is, h- I tried to learn it from ServiceNow trainings, but I could not learn, to be honest. Like, it was, there were
Mhm.
so many new concepts. So
Yeah.
without any background in uh,
Mhm.
IRM or GRC, is
Mhm.
it easy to learn this topic? Or it needs
Yes, Jay.
industry experience?
No,
That's the
definitely
question.
not. If you don't mind, you're working as a developer, you said, right, or an architect?
I was a developer and like
Architect.
developer ITSM, developer admin, yes.
Superb, Jay. Got it.
Well,
So to your question, do you need any prerequisite knowledge? I mean, there are two things. One, domain knowledge, it's always good to have, right? I mean, for example, now if you get any development to do the ITSM implementation for insurance organization, that really doesn't make much difference for you because you know what ServiceNow is and you know what ITSM is. You know what
correct.
are the flows, you know what are the scripts, you know what are the configurations part. So this is your backend support, right? You know the tool better already. So do you need any domain knowledge in ServiceNow IRM? No, this is kind of a training for freshers who would like to start their career in IRM as well. Yeah. Or anyone for an architect who would like to explore as an additional module along with ITSM or HRSD or along with the finance or something like that. Yeah. So I wouldn't say like you should have a domain knowledge as a developer, because if somebody asks you come up with a requirement, it will be more from the implementation side saying that, okay, how can you implement this with us? So now you know the GRC knowledge, how exactly the GRC works in ServiceNow IRM, right? All you need to is apply your GRC knowledge plus your ServiceNow development knowledge to do that implementation. Yeah. So when I said initially, most of the project will fail is because just ServiceNow development will not help you to implement GRC projects. So this GRC knowledge will be your kind of an difference maker or unique selling point, I would say, to do the IRM implementations. That makes
So my
sense, Jay?
question, no, my
Mhm.
question is without having industry knowledge, how is
Mhm.
your course is going to be to pick up the knowledge in GRC? Will you
So
explain
when
the table
mhm.
structures and how the
Yeah,
GRC flows work?
course. Yeah, because we're picking up two topics. When you say domain knowledge, you mean to say what is audit, what are the risk framework, right? What are these GDPR, what are these things? This is domain knowledge. And when you say table, it is more ServiceNow specific thing, right? Like what is GRC table, what is the architecture, right? So domain knowledge, it's good to have, not mandatory, but ServiceNow tool knowledge or the table knowledge, it's mandatory to do the ServiceNow implementation. And we are exactly going to discuss the entity framework, table architecture and all. Maybe you can just click clamps. And you're still able to see my screen, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So we discuss the architecture first. That's very important for any implementation. And then we are going to do like module wise architecture, how exactly one table is connected, right? Maybe let me quickly go to the next slide. Yeah, this is just for policy and compliance management. This is how the architecture looks only for the compliance management. The one we saw before was the skeleton overview of the overall ServiceNow IRM architecture, right? So in your question, you mentioned about two topics. One is domain knowledge, one is the table knowledge. So table knowledge, definitely we are going to discuss, and how they are connected together, how data flows between the different tables, we are going to discuss as a part of this training.
Okay. And last question. In the
Yes,
audit part,
please.
there was a lot of discussion about KPIs.
Okay.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how to I think in the audit part, will you explain
Mm-hmm.
those topics like how KPIs work and how the um,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Okay.
those things? Okay, yeah, it's a
Good.
difficult question to ask, but
Yeah, I
I gave
understand.
you the
I get your
indication.
point. Yep. So now where these KPIs come from? These KPIs come from your compliance management and the risk management. What we do in the audit, we are not going to define the KPIs in the audit. We are going to inherit these KPIs from the policy management and the compliance management and the risk management. Okay, that's what I meant probably. Yeah, sorry if I confused you more about that point.
Yeah,
But what are these KPIs?
correct.
Yeah, these are control indicators or the risk indicators. These are KPIs we are
Correct.
going to measure. Yeah. We
Yeah,
are going to touch
risk
base these
indicators.
things in exactly. We are going to touch base this topic in compliance management itself to start with. Okay. Now, what are KPIs? These KPIs are different for different organizations. Now, I cannot tell Jay, this is your KPI. Yeah, you practice this because these KPIs are organization driven. For example, like I said, for
That's
e-commerce management, their
right.
e-commerce website is KPI to measure the KPI against their website. But for any other industries, they also have a website, but it's just for content management system. For them, it really doesn't matter. They don't have for them the KPIs are their core applications or the core operations, right? So I can give the generic KPIs which are being used across different organizations in different domains. But if you ask me, can you tell me what KPIs I need to prepare for, then yeah, that will be very difficult answer for me to answer it.
Okay. Yeah.
Hope
Thank
that
you.
makes sense. Yeah.
Mm.
Good. Any other questions? Feel free. It's more interactive. There's no like good question or maybe dumb question and all. Okay. It's very open session. And good that Kumar and Jay brought a very good question. Yes, Madhu. Sorry.
Yeah. Like, are we covering TPRM in this GRC training?
No, Madhu. Yeah, thanks for bringing up that question. Maybe I can quickly show you one of the slide as well. Probably that will give you the overview. While discussing, we will discuss about all the capabilities of ServiceNow. Okay. Sorry for taking your time. Just give me a sec. Yep. So now this is integrated risk management, and we have business continuity management, and we have standalone SKUs. Okay. We will bring up this topic when discussing the license part. So when we say integrated risk management, it's mainly about risk and compliance and the audit management. Okay, so these are the individual SKUs. We have a separate training for business continuity management. We have a separate training for third-party risk management or TPRM or PRM, vendor risk management, any name you would for the namesake. Okay, so as a part of this training, ServiceNow IRM training, the primary focus will be on the first box completely. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Audit management, compliance management, policy and compliance management, risk management. Yep. Even regulatory management is not involved because this is kind of an additional topic. But excluding all regulatory management, we are going to touch base all other modules, but not BCM topic. Of course, they are a child of IRM and third-party risk management. We have a separate training for that as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Any other questions? If anyone has already working in IRM, would you like to know more about any specific topic you'd like to discuss?
I have
Yes,
one
please.
question.
Yeah.
My question is, in this training, I want to understand also if I want to actually customize the solution, whatever the use cases or whatever what out of box table is built by the ServiceNow. Because it's happened, right? Business have their own actually process follow. They not follow the whatever you are going to give us. So they will ask you to change this workflow, this actually process flows. So those actually customization are we going to cover in this training?
Customization, we will discuss the use case, Pankaj, but we are not going to do the actual customization. Okay, like I said, it's going to be more of a greenfield implementation training. But to your point, yes, no organizations are going to do the greenfield implementation, but definitely not on the phase one. So whenever we have an interaction with ServiceNow, or when we do the consultation for the stakeholders or for the customers, right? When they come up with a customization, yes, we are going to do that, but not immediately because we want them to understand the system better, right? Now, for example, one of the requirement was to build the custom dashboard. Now we showed them what are the out of the box dashboard available, and how we can achieve the requirement you're looking for. On top of that, if they really want to customize, we will do that at the cost of impact. In ServiceNow IRM, most of the things are interconnected. There will be a lot of automation running in the back end. There are a lot of calculations happening for the compliance score, for the risk score calculation, and the risk score roll up from lower downstream entities to the upstream entities. They might have a lot of impact. So we will train or we will educate them the impact of that part. And then if they want to go with the customization, of course, customization is nothing. It's just
No,
configuration.
my
If you know
question
the
is not,
flow in ServiceNow IRM,
yeah, customization only not in the actual dashboard or the reporting. Suppose here there is a score, how we are going to calculating the risk, or we are actually giving that risk rating. It is depend every company having their own actual customs, right? Yeah, own actual calculation formulas. So those formulas we need to change. So we need to know where to change, in which table or in which field, how to change those kind of formula. So is this the part we are going to cover? Okay. Second thing we can say is workflow. Okay, let me confirm. Second thing I want to change entirely workflow. Sometime, okay, risk will be created by the risk owner. It will go to the risk champion. It will go to the account. Then it approve. Those what workflow, it is always change with the actual company to company. They will having their own actually workflow. So maybe they will ask you to change this customized workflow. So those actually flow designer or those parts we are going to cover in this training.
Not specifically, because when we say that we are going to change the flow designer can be anything, right? We can discuss this as a part of ServiceNow IRM admin training, but what will get impact if we do make changes, we are going to cover as a part of ServiceNow IRM training. Okay, for example, for your first example, risk score calculation, we are going to do this configuration, we are going to do the methodology, we are going to do the addition calculations of the risk score. Now with this, what is going to happen? You are going to know where the configuration is, where the data is. Now, if the customer asks you, if we want to do the risk score from A to Y, first thing to know is where exactly this calculation is happening, correct? And then you can go ahead and customize that. So as a part of this training, we are going to discuss where this calculation is happening and how it is happening and how we are going to configure that for calculation. On top of that, if you want to change, you definitely don't need a more training on that part, right? It's again a flow change, or it's a field configuration, or it's a flow configuration, as simple as straightforward. But to answer your question, we'll not touch base the customization part, but we are going to definitely discuss use case, what might be the possible use cases for such things.
Okay, fine. Good.
Cool.
Yeah, hi, Ashish this side.
Ashish.
Sorry, I joined a bit late. All I'm interested in the project that you will give us and which framework and we will use for that, and more on the industry kind of insight, which frameworks are being used, how they use it, so on and so forth, and what will be or what are the common requirements. So is this something that you're going to cover?
Yes and no, because the question is very generic, Ashish, because what framework we are going to follow, different organizations are going to follow, because it's a huge data, right? Because there are hundreds of standards out there, very standard thing, like if insurance, they are going to use HIPAA, right? If there are any financial requirements, we'll be applying with the CFOs, we have DORA, we have NIST, we have hundreds of requirements. So I can give you the list of domain-specific compliance framework, what you're following, that can be done. That's not a challenge. But as a part of our training, we are going to implement, we'll pick one use case, one of an organization, what exactly we are going to do the compliance framework for. So any compliance framework will have thousands of compliance requirement. So we may not implement thousands of compliance requirement. We might pick 4 to 5 use cases, maybe about data sensitivity, about the data privacy, couple of them. We are going to create the control objective. We are going to apply them against certain assets, what we have created in our training. And we are going to generate the control. We are going to complete the control lifecycle attestation. Issue will be created. We are going to create a policy exception against such record to get some deviations, right? This is what we are going to do as a part of this training.
So when you say that you will give us few use cases, can you tell me which ISO standard, there are many standards out there, right? Which one we gonna use it?
So here is a lab exercise I'll do. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you see, you ask the answer thing part. Okay.
Yes, so
you know what?
So why I'm asking this question, I would like to understand the broader approach of this, IRM implementation. That's
Yes.
the whole
No,
thing.
got your point.
Yeah.
No, that's valuable question. I mean, no question about that part. Okay. So because we cannot just focus on just one framework like ISO or maybe GDPR or something like that, right? So what we need to understand is we get compliance requirement from our business. Like we as an GRC implementation expert, we are not going to decide what will be the framework. Now imagine there's a project coming up. They have decided they are going to implement ISO. They are going to give us the list of their requirements, like what will be their compliance checks they would like to do. We are going to implement them as a part of the project, right? But we are not going to work on how exactly the ISO works, how exactly the GDPR works. We are not going to spend time on understanding what is GDPR, right? But what we need to understand is when GDPR team gives you certain requirements, we need to identify whether it's an authority document, whether it's a citation, whether it's a control objective, can it be automated, how the risk should be created against us. This will be more training focused, yeah, but definitely not. I mean, it will be more from domain perspective, like someone spending 20, 25 years in the GRC domain would know how exactly the ISO works. If you try to spend some time understanding what exactly the ISO is, what are the different versions available, what are they mainly focusing upon, what are the standard assets they are going to apply. If you get into this, it's going to be a more domain specific training, and it's an ocean.
Okay, so what will be the key outcomes of the training? I mean, if you can just give me in a pointed. So let's assume we go for this training. What the key outcome of this, of the training?
Sure. So may I know what's your current profile? You're working as an.
I am working as an architect.
Oh, perfect. So imagine in our organizations, you guys are going to implement ServiceNow. You already implemented ServiceNow for a different model. Now we want to use IRM, right? So when they come to you as an architect, when they come to you, like first thing they come to you is like, we want to implement GRC, not ServiceNow GRC. They come with saying, we want to implement GRC. Can you please help with us, right? Now, what all we do in such things, like what are your requirements, right? What all you want to implement? Now you do the tool analysis, maybe ServiceNow or maybe any other tool, right? And then the cost implications. You need to understand the license concept for that, right? When you know the license, you know what will be the cost impact for that. And then the feature feasibility. Okay, these are your 10 requirements. You are going to guess these requirements in ServiceNow IRM for this cost. Yep. And when these things will pass on, when your stakeholders are happy that, okay, I want to implement ServiceNow IRM, the next question would be the implementation. Can you give us your control objectives, your risk records, so that we can import them into our system? And can we connect, how we can connect different data to the different sources, right? And then how the lifecycle should work, how the training works, how the individual process works in ServiceNow IRM. So this is where you're going to gain knowledge. So as an architect, you will be able to do the solutioning for your customers, maybe for your organization or maybe for external organization. Ashish?
So it will be more IRM. So you are going to cover this integrated risk management and audit management as well, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, audit management is a part of IRM. IRM is a generic word, okay? ServiceNow Integrated Risk Management or ServiceNow Governance, Risk and Compliance. It's a set of applications. Within that, we have policy, compliance, audit, regulatory change management, PCM. These all are small module applications. We are going to cover these as a part of this training.
And you are not going to cover TPRM and other those stuff, right?
Not TPRM, yes.
Okay, got it. Fine. So after attending this training, so you will be discussing more on the functional side of the IRM plus how to configure those things.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Okay, fine. And the tech side, what you're gonna cover, or or it will be largely on the functional side of the IRM.
Yeah, especially ServiceNow IRM is more functional side, right? We have a different training, for example, security operations. Yeah. So if you start with the security operation training, it will be 90% tech and 10% functional part because it's more integration or implementation, right? But when it comes to ServiceNow, it's more functional and then technical. So 90% it will be more functional. Like I told, we need to configure the risk assessment methodologies. We need to configure the flow there. So we touch base some 10 to 15 to 20% of this tech part as a part of this training.
Okay, and you will be discussing all the use cases that you might have came across, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And feel free to, you can just Google out how exactly the ServiceNow training goes. What's the knowledge required for the domain part? Okay, it's more functional. ServiceNow IRM is more functional part. Yeah.
Well, I am aware of the overall the product because
Okay.
like
Correct.
there are many things like they are on-demand trainings are also available, which teach you multiple times, right? But from the business
Yes.
context, things may not be clear enough when we dealing with the business stakeholders. So that is one
Yes.
of the challenges because it's a completely different domain as
True.
compared to other product lines of ServiceNow.
I'm 100% with you on that statement. Yes. It's because when you deal with the business stakeholders, it's more about the language we speak when we talk to them. Yeah, it will be not more from the ServiceNow language perspective, but yeah, the terminology is the language they speak, and especially with ServiceNow IRM, it's entirely different.